How do flying dinosaurs survive today? Some of them eat fish.
An email I received, this is from southern Minnesota. Quote, in 1995, I had a very close encounter with something similar to a pterosaur, unquote. After fishing at dusk, he headed back home. At a shallow cave or deep outcropping, he heard something like clicking or tapping. Quote, I got within 15 feet of the mouth of the cave. I see this beautiful burgundy-colored thing standing near the opening. It was smooth with no feathers and a large horn out the back of its head. I could see that as it was pulling meat off a fish, its beak was making the tapping noise I heard. I, being a complete idiot, decided to see how close I could get to it. It turned around and stared right at me. It walked a little ways back in the cave, ran forwards, and flew off, unquote.
But why have they not yet been officially discovered? For one thing, they're mostly nocturnal. They also seem to be very uncommon, if not rare. But another factor is extremely important, and we'll get to that later. Most of these flying creatures have long tails. The animal is called Ropen. Now for what some eyewitnesses call dragons. We begin in Lompoc, California, in the words of the eyewitness, quote, I just saw one, and it did not flap its wings. It was huge. It could easily carry a deer or person. It was a grayish tan and beige color. I told my roommate to look, and he too saw it. It had a bony-like bat wing, not feather-like, unquote. Now we move southeast to Los Angeles County, in Lakewood, just a few miles from where I lived at that time. The two eyewitnesses both thought of the word dragon for what they encountered. Quote, I was sitting in the backyard facing east at about 11 p.m., looking up over the riverbed, maybe 100 yards away. I saw what I took as a large bird with a wingspan of around 4 to 6 feet. This isn't a regular sight in Lakewood, and I looked on with interest when noticing what looked like a long tail with a barbed object at the end. I dismissed the whole thing, thinking my eyes were playing tricks on me, unquote. I interviewed that eyewitness by phone, and she mentioned the word dragon. She volunteered that word. 2 years later, in that same backyard in Lakewood, California, another lady encountered a, quote, dragon pterodactyl, unquote. That sighting was by the sister of the lady who saw a dragon-like flying creature here at night. But this time it was in daylight, and the end of the dragon's tail was only about 18 feet from the lady's forehead. For many months, neither sister knew about the other's sighting. I interviewed them separately. Now for 3 sightings in Texas. Number 1, Brownsville around 1995. The girl, about 12 years old, walked into the backyard. Why did the dog look scared, hiding behind that tree? Then she saw the figure standing in the neighbor's backyard. What had terrified the dog? It seemed like a very tall man. He apparently was, quote, draped in a long black coat or cape, unquote. At first the figure was facing away from her. Then it turned, revealing its head non-human. Dracula came to the girl's mind. It turned its head again, and the girl thought, pterodactyl. Then it lifted its wings and started to glide towards her. The girl ran back into her house just in time. In the words of another eyewitness, quote, in 2010, I was traveling home here in Austin, Texas. Something in the sky caught my eye. At first glance, it didn't register. I knew I recognized it, but it took me a moment or two to realize this bird is supposed to be extinct. Pointy head, long, large, webbed wings, long tail with like a triangle tip. All clear as day, no doubt, unquote. In 2014, this eyewitness sent me an email. In 2006, I got an email from an eyewitness from San Antonio. Quote, "One evening I was outside my apartment building talking to my brother. We knew what the local birds and bats looked like and were familiar with exotic animals as well, from regular zoo attendance and general interest. Neither my brother or I was prone to being scared by anything outside at night. This night was different. We noticed something flying around across the road. The creature was flying just above the phone lines. It would go one direction, turn, and swoop back. The shape was wrong for any large bird of the area, and the size was much too large to be any bat I have ever seen. The wingspan was huge, anywhere from 6 to 10 feet across. It's as though a giant vampire bat, like Dracula style, was there." Unquote. Why have modern pterosaurs not yet been officially discovered as of early 2023? The important third factor we'll get into in about 3.5 minutes.
Pterodactyl teeth. That's evidence in cryptozoology that the Ropen is descended from a species of rhamphorhynchoid pterosaur that lived in the past. Look at the number of persons who have actively searched for modern pterosaurs in the past 2 decades. Some of them have seen an apparent living pterosaur, a flying creature commonly called by non-scientists a pterodactyl. I'm Jonathan Whitcomb. For a few years now, my wife and I have interviewed eyewitnesses of apparent non-extinct pterodactyls in Utah. We recommend that you consider objectively the testimonies of those who report from around the world apparent modern pterosaurs. Stay with us in this video for sightings in which eyewitnesses have seen teeth in a pterodactyl's mouth. Most rhamphorhynchoids known by paleontologists from fossils had teeth. Most sightings people have in modern times are at a distance that makes it difficult or impossible to see the teeth. Now for the exceptions. Early in 2019, I got an email from a lady in Canada. Here's part of her first email. "I was standing 10 feet away from one on a country road in Quebec. It pierced a garbage bag and it was trying to get into its contents when we fell upon it. It got spooked and flew away. Its wingspan was at least the size of the street, if not more. It had teeth in its beak, claws in the middle of its wings, a long skinny neck, a horn protruding towards the back of its head. That sighting in the summer of 1987 was by 2 eyewitnesses." Now for 2 sightings in Minnesota. Here's part of the first email from the first sighting. "3 of us seen it as it was gliding across the highway in northern Minnesota. It was early morning. It had reddish-brown leather-type skin with no feathers, bat-like wings, a crest on its head, a mouth full of small teeth in the back and larger in the front, all very sharp. The tail was long with a spade-shaped thing at the end of it. It was about as big as one lane on the highway. I've learned not to tell anyone because they just laugh and think I'm crazy." In the second email from this lady, she said that it had wings like a bat.
Yeah, it was July of 2018.
Oh, great.
But I got to see its face good enough. I saw some teeth in its mouth, and I saw a large eye. And I could see that the wings were bent at angles in the front and were curved in the back. And I didn't see any feathers.
Why have modern pterosaurs not been officially discovered earlier in history by Western scientists? It's not just because the animals are mostly nocturnal and rare. Scientists are human and so can fall into one or more cognitive biases, including groupthink, also known as bandwagon effect or herd mentality. It often occurs when a group of persons makes a decision or reaches an opinion based upon a strongly held idea that is already popular in that group. I'm Jonathan Whitcomb. What is this concept of groupthink? is a cognitive bias that appears to have hindered some people, preventing them from objectively evaluating eyewitness reports of apparent living pterosaurs, also called pterodactyls and dragons. Groupthink, however, does not apparently apply to the reports themselves, the accounts that people have of seeing these flying creatures. I've interviewed hundreds of eyewitnesses originally from 6 continents over the past 20 years, and these persons have a variety of backgrounds, various cultures, various religious persuasions, and various educational accomplishments. These eyewitnesses also have a variety of opinions about the origin of life, the Bible, and the idea of Charles Darwin. Yet each one has seen what looked like a pterodactyl or a dragon. Now watch another video on this channel, Protect Animal Life.